In this video, we're going to be tuning our enemies, giving them actual stats that we'll be using in the game and playtesting it to make sure it feels good. And we're going to start our stats spreadsheet. We're going to create for the player some damage and health stats and also for our enemy archetypes. Let's dive in and get started. We'll start with one enemy and the player. And the relationship we have here is that each of them deals damage and obviously receives damage and has a certain number of hit points. That is the amount of damage in total that they can receive. So we'll start with the player, have a look at what the player's got here. There's maximum hit points arbitrarily at 100 at the moment. Let's look at the player and the amount of damage the player can receive in relation to the amount of damage that this bruiser enemy that I've got here. And we'll say that where our level is probably somewhere in the first 1/3 of this game. To give us an anchor point for just how strong should my player be, you really don't want to be taking your prototype level as the very first level in the game because it's not indicative of how most of your game is going to flow. Maybe you haven't, through the tutorial, you haven't given your character all the different abilities and weapons and the enemies are going to behave differently. So that's why I like to take this prototype tuning and say, well, this is probably a couple of hours into a 10-hour game. For example, if you've got a 10-hour game, a couple of hours into it. So we'll look at the player. I would like to have our overall point system be fairly big. And if you look at some of the old school pinball games, you know, when you're playing and you play for a minute and you end up with 300 trillion points, maybe not quite that big. But I'd like to give us enough flexibility so that we can increase and decrease pretty easily. So I'm going to start the player with 1,000 hit points. Is that going to be the right amount? I have no idea, but we're going to start somewhere. And this is our starting point, 1,000 hit points for the player. Now, when I come up against an enemy, what's a framework we can use for this encounter? One framework that we can use is how many hits to kill. And I think we're going to be using that throughout this whole project, how many hits to kill. So if I'm a player, I've been playing for a couple of hours, we'll say I'm level 8. So I've leveled up 7 times. I'm feeling moderately powerful, and I come up against one individual on its own. It's a strong kind of character. There should be some sort of relationship here where I'm pretty strong and he's pretty strong, and I feel this is a little bit of a fair battle but that I'm most likely to win. This is not a mini-boss, it's not a boss, it's not a big epic fight where I'm going to have to use 5 health potions. I should be able to come up to him and beat him and probably lose, I don't know, a quarter of my health, because I've got to run the whole way through levels. I don't want to be losing all of my health every single time I come up against a guy. So maybe this kind of battle, he's going to deal me, I don't know, a quarter of my health, maybe a little bit less. We'll start with that. So in that instance, the how many hits to kill me before I kill him is going to rely on how long it takes for me to kill him. So let's say it's going to take me, I don't know, how long in seconds would I like to take to kill him? You know, if I run up, let's just simulate this a little bit and see what feels good. If this is, I'm a couple of hours in, I've got a guy, he's on his own, he seems pretty tough, I come up, I'm hit, and then I hit, and maybe I have to dodge a little bit, hit, I do a spell or ability, hit, he's pretty tough, and then, boom, one more time, I get him. What was that? That's probably about 5 seconds, right? So we'll say he's a 5-second enemy to kill. 5-second enemy to kill, and in that 5 seconds, I want him to have done, we'll say around about 20% of my total hit points. So if I've got 1,000 current hit points, then he's going to do about 200. Let me just very quickly write those numbers in case you guys aren't following that, because I'm talking too fast. Delete this previous stuff. So I have, as the player, I have 1,000 hit points. This is going to be a 5-second combat against one enemy. He's a fairly strongish kind of enemy, appropriate for my level. And in that time, I want him to have depleted my health by 20%. So that's going to take me down to about 800. So he's done 200 points of damage, which means if he's doing 200 points of damage, means he's doing how much damage per second? 200 divided by 5. So I'll write it over here. 200 divided by 5 equals 40 and DPS. damage per second. So if we want our player to be doing 40 DPS, then that's pretty straightforward. At the moment, we don't have any modifiers, so maybe at some point my hero is going to have a shield, and if he's got a shield, then the shield might do a modification where it halves the incoming damage, at which point we might need to raise him up to 80 DPS. But we're not yet ready to have that particular conversation. We'll get there, and we're on our way there. I know some of you guys are really hankering to get there. For now, we'll just say he's got 40 DPS. And the way that we came at that was we want him to do, in 5 seconds, we want him to do about 200 points of damage to us. Okay. Let's jump back over here. So I've got my 1,000. We'll go over to him, and we'll figure out how are we going to give him 40 DPS. Well, one way to do that is to say damage per shot. Coincidentally, we had him 40 from our previous tuning. That was actually super coincidental, but I guess we're on the right wavelength. Seconds between is 1. So then he's doing 40 damage every 1 second. That's 40 DPS. So let's do the 5-second test and see how this works out. So if we run up, and we'll start with full health, and we'll let him hit us. 1, he's missed us so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll run out of his sphere. And that's probably around about 20%. So that feels pretty good so far, doesn't it? We've got our first relationship where it's a meaningful, we've deliberately said that's what he's going to do to us. And so what I'm going to do at this point is something very cool, is start our stat spreadsheet. So I'm in Google Docs here. You guys can have a look at this, follow along, check it out. I'll take snapshots at certain points in time and leave a PDF of this against the lecture. But this document itself is a living document, so it'll be at whatever stage it is as I'm editing it, as you guys come along. And if you want to use one of these yourself, then just copy whatever's in there and start your own spreadsheet. Google Docs is pretty easy to get into. It's free, so go to docs.google.com, put in your Gmail or your whatever your Google registered account is, and then go for it. We're looking for Sheets is the sort of document that this is. What I'm going to do up here is just start. It's early days with our spreadsheet. This is going to get huge. And if you love spreadsheets, then you are going to love this course. You are going to love making RPGs. You are going to love all of this process. If you hate spreadsheets, then you might want to get a friend to help you out with this kind of stuff, because RPGs and spreadsheets go hand in hand. What I'm going to start out with is the player. So I've got a player tab down here. I'll make an enemy tab in a moment. And I'm just going to create a whole bunch of levels. We'll speed this up a little bit. Just who knows how many levels we'll have in our game. We'll just take it up to the end here. 21. Not sure, are we going to have 7 levels or 100 levels? We'll feel that as we go along. For now, we don't want to be too concrete. Don't go and make a gigantic spreadsheet that everything's locked in yet, because one little change in your prototype here, one little, wouldn't it be cool if instead of lasting 5 seconds, it feels good when combat lasts 8 seconds, and then you're like, oh goodness, what do I do in here? So we have to, this is organic, this whole process. So this is the player level. Player level, you start off at level 1. We at level 1, you're fairly weak. We're saying maybe he's at level 8 for our 1,000 hit points. So we'll say hit points, or we'll write it, or health. You guys can write it, whatever's meaningful to you. And I'm going to say at level 8, he's got 1,000. What does that mean at level 1? Not exactly sure, but for now, we'll just do a little bit of guessing, and we'll say, just for the sake of putting some numbers in there, we'll say each level he's adding on 100. I can probably do this a quicker way, but this is the way. Maybe he starts off at, what's he going to start off with if I do it this way? It's 300. We'll need to get in there and see what a good amount is when we're actually making our level 1. For now, we've just got some numbers. And it could be that you're doing a linear progression. It could be that you're doing a progression where you go from 300 to 400 to 600 to 1,000 that is not linear. It's curvilinear, perhaps. So we're not sure on that yet. We're going to get into those sorts of stats and tuning and tweaking a lot more later on. For now, we just need some numbers in there. And we also have a base damage that he is going to do. We'll call this base health. And you guys who play a lot of RPGs will know why I'm calling it base health and base damage, is because we're going to have modifiers. At some point, we will have something like your constitution score and your strength score that will modify. So if you've got a high constitution, then you might have a base health of 300, but you add an extra 50 to it because you've got a high constitution score. So we'll play around with that stuff in the future. For now, we're just doing base health and base damage. Now, what damage did we give to our enemy? We gave him 40 DPS, so he was hitting every 1 second. He was doing 40. So it seems reasonable that our player has more than that, because he's the player and he's strong and he's awesome. So what if we say at this same level, let's give the player 50 as the base damage. Now, you might say my player is going to hit slowly and do big, powerful hits, or you might say he's going to be rapid, like jab, 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 and you can tune it. So if you're saying it's 50 DPS, it might be 25 damage times and 2 times that you hit per second, which results in 50. It could be that you hit every 2 seconds for 100. That's up to you guys with your tuning. And, you know, I'm going to put some numbers in. You guys put whatever numbers feel good for you. So we're starting off with this. We'll jump back into the build. And we'll put in for our player. Did I do any tuning while I was in play mode? I don't think I did. Good. I do that from time to time. Player. Now, I'm going to go down damage per hit. We're going to put this to 50. Minimum time between hits. Now, you know what? I think it's going to feel better if our player actually hits more frequently. Bang, bang, bang. What do you guys think? Is it going to be like bang, big swing, bang, big swing? Different weapons might have different swings. So for now, let's just take a nice, convenient middle of the road where we do 1 second, just so it's clean, and we do 50. And in the future, we might say, well, you know, the hoe is a fairly slow weapon or medium weapon. And if he has a big broadsword, it might be slower and bigger hit. And so a broadsword would be perhaps a 100 damage, and the time in between would be 2. Or actually, it'd probably be cooler than that. It'd be like 400 damage in 2 seconds. Whereas a dagger might be 20, and it might hit 4 times per second. And so let's have a look at how this is feeling now in terms of running up. Run up, hit the enemy, hit, hit, hit. You can see his health bar going hit, hit, hit. It's going down a certain amount. Seems a little bit slow. I wanted to kill him in 5 seconds, so let's go back to our enemy and have a look at him. If I'm doing 50 DPS, damages per second, or damage per second, sorry, and I want to kill him in 5 seconds, then I need to give him, how much is that? 250. Didn't even need the calculator for that one. Look at that. So jump back in here, 250 hit points, 250, bam. Okay, all that stuff looks pretty good. Okay, now let's go in there. If this fight lasts for around about 5 seconds, I get down to 80%, then it's a bang, crunch, crunch, crunch. There we go. That worked out pretty well, didn't it? Look at that, as if we had a plan and a strategy. I love it. So we now have a bruiser. He's the appropriate level for who we are, where we are right now. So let's go back to our spreadsheet. This is what we're going to be continuing to update as we go, just so we're not trying to keep it all in our mind, all in our memory bank. And here we're going to create this guy that we're going to call enemy. How shall we name this? There's going to be a gazillion enemies. Let's name this enemies. I think we're going to have, we don't want to have one tab per enemy. That's going to get a little bit crazy. And I don't think we necessarily need to have a whole bunch of levels. An enemy doesn't level up per se. What should we do here? Let's have the enemy name. And then, well, our stats are going to go down here. So probably want the enemies to go along this way. So we're going to have Bruiser is the first guy here. And we'll give him an approximate level for the appropriateness of us. I'm not sure yet whether the Bruiser will be a level 8 kind of guy and he'll just appear there, or we'll have Bruiser throughout the whole game and we'll give him a modifier that says if the player is level 8, then change your stats this way. If the player is level 10, change your stats this way. Not exactly sure on that yet. We're going to feel that one out a little bit, see how we go. But they're two of the paradigms we could use. So if he's approximately a level 8 kind of dude, then his damage, what did we say? His hit points, we'll start with that as we've done with the player. Let's just jump over here, use a similar paradigm, base health, base damage. So health and damage is, his health was 250 and his damage is 40. We'll leave it, we won't need to put in DPS, we'll just leave it as 40. Although you know what we could do is we could put in damage, this is probably a better way of doing it, DPS, and then per hit and attack speed, just so we've got the calculations there so we know what's going on, particularly if we wipe it or change it or update it or any of those kind of things. So damage per hit is 40 and attack speed is 1. Okay, so we've created a bruiser. So now for a mini challenge before I jump in and work through my other two enemies that I've got in here, who are the archer and the minion. Why don't you go ahead now, pause the video and go through that same process, update your spreadsheet and update the stats in the level, go through the exercise of bring them one-on-one for now, and we'll do more than one in a moment, and update the stats in exactly the same way for the archer and the minion. So pause and go through that exercise now, if you would. Okay, and welcome back. Hopefully you did well with that. Let's do this together now. I'll grab one archer. I'll put my bruiser out of the way. Thanks for joining us. Pop over there for now, buddy. And you know what I should be doing, if I'm paying attention, is applying that back to the prefab so that I don't lose all these things. And when I drop a new guy down, it's going to stick. So let me get Boris the archer. So let's add him here as an archer. And you know what's cool? When you guys get into the flow of the spreadsheet, you'll just be able to make all of your enemies in here without even needing to go back into the game to play around with them. I'm actually going to make him level 6. I think he's a little bit weaker. I'm probably appropriate for a couple of levels ago. Makes him a little bit softer. I think we already had 100 health in there for him. And that seems pretty good, I think, in relation to the bruiser. Damage per second. Well, I think comparable to the bruiser, maybe a tiny bit less if he's a level 6 kind of guy. Probably aiming for 40 or a touch less. Let's see what his per hit would be. I think an arrow is probably going to be a slight, still even at level 6, slight bit stronger. So make it 50, but he was shooting, if I remember in our prototype, we had him shooting at 1.5 attack speed. So what I'm going to do here is actually calculate the DPS rather than putting it in, because there's no actual setting in our build at the moment as DPS. We're putting in these two and we're arriving at this number here. So I'm going to use a calculation. If you guys are familiar with spreadsheet calculations, I'll just be go over it a little bit briefly for you. Hit equals, that means we're going to get into some sort of fancy calculation. Well, it's not too fancy because we're clicking on this cell and saying take that and divide by the cell just below it. And then hit enter, and that gives us 33. That's pretty good, slightly lower than the bruiser. I think that's appropriate, level 6. Let me just go and do the same calculation for the bruiser as well. Now, if I can copy this cell and paste it over there, blink, and it has magically pasted the values, but move them all to the left. So this is C 5 and 6. And over here, if we click on there, it's B, 5 and 6. So if you copy a cell and paste it, it's going to paste the formula. So I could do the same over here, copy from there, paste in there. There's actually nothing in these two, but if I was to put in here 102, then it would give us 50. Pretty cool. Let's go in and make those modifications back in the world. And damage per shot is going to be 50. And seconds is 1.5. That's good as it was. And let's see how this fight goes. Bam, he gets one off me before I can get to him. Damn, kill, shoot. Which is a good point, actually. I hadn't thought about this. I'm taking it from he is going to live for as long as once I get to him, his 1 or 2 seconds starts. But up until then, he's getting shots at me. So he gets a couple of free shots before I get there. Okay, cool. Not too bad. His damage might be a little bit too extreme now, but well, we can tune him down pretty easily later on. Not a problem. So that felt pretty good for that guy. We're going to apply him back to the prefab. Wonderful. Put you back there next to your buddy. And come on down, Mr. Minion. Let's jump over to the spreadsheet, add ourselves a minion. I'm going to make him level 4 just to represent the fact that he's been around for a while and he's now pretty easy to hit. If he's easy to hit, we're doing 50 DPS or 50 on one single hit. So I'm going to put him less than that. We're now at the point where we can just smack him 1 hit, 1 kill. Is that going to be fun? Not sure. Probably going to need a lot of the minions. I generally don't like 1 hit, 1 kill. But we'll see how that goes for now. Put in 40. And then we're going to go for the amount that he hits us is only 5. But he's hitting us a little bit more rapidly. So every half a second, 0.5, he's doing a hit on us. Therefore, we will copy over our formula, boom, and that gives us 10 that the minion is doing as a DPS. So he's probably maybe going to get 1 hit off before we smack him in the head and he's all gone. So that's the minion. Let's go and transfer these back into the build. Okay, hit points, 40, and then 10 for his damage per shot is 10, and seconds between shot, no, that's not correct, it's 5. 5 just there. Okay, good one. Let's see how a little fight with this one guy goes. Pew, pew, pew. Hit, bang, got him in one hit. He got one little shot off on me, so if I go and apply him back to the prefab, let me just run down into a group of his buddies, and maybe he'll chase along as well. So this will be a case of running up and giving the player the feeling of, wouldn't it be nice if these pesky guys can be like, bam, got you, bam, got you, got you. I have to wait for my second, and then, phew, okay. Maybe a little bit too easy. We might want to have them 2 hits. But for now, we're going to have them 1 hit and just leave it at that. Over to our challenge to wrap up this video. I want you to tune your enemies for one-on-one encounters as we've just done. Make sure you go through that process. And then tune your enemies for multi-enemy combat. So to have half a dozen minions and 1 bruiser, see how that feels, to have a couple of archers and 1 bruiser, just so we don't get in a situation where we realize, oh goodness, while I'm killing the bruiser, those archers just decimate me, and we might need to tweak and tune a little bit more. Go through and do that for a couple of combat moments. Don't worry about the whole level yet, because in the next video or 2, we're going to go through and see the whole flow for our level and how we get through it. I've got something really cool I want to show you guys before that, because we're missing one fundamental element, and I'll tell you about that in the next video.